Good morning. I'm Ashley McCall. I am the CEO of ThinkForward, and I would like to warmly welcome you this morning to our session to talk about young people and how to secure their futures. Thank you so much for engaging in the debate. I'd like to just set out what today is about. Really, we are talking about what the future is going to look like for young people having a labour market that is so impacted by COVID-19. We were so concerned about that impact on the future prospects of young people. We felt it was important to be part of a connected sector response. We also recognise that we can't find solutions alone. So we want to work with all of our partners across the sector. We want to reach out to those who we have a relationship with, including partner schools, friends across education, government and the private sector. Finding solutions to the youth employment challenge has never been so important. I just want to draw your attention to some of the poll questions which came out just as you joined on the right-hand side. Really what we wanted to do was try and connect you to some of your emotions as adults as you were going through lockdown, so that we could talk about some of the feedback that we've had from our young people. So the questions that we asked you were really around what were your biggest challenges? Was it uncertainty about the future, homeschooling your children? I know many of you have been trying to work from home whilst also trying to make sure that your children haven't missed out on any education opportunities and they are accessing their schoolwork. I know many of you also will have been trying to bring up families at the same time, and of course missing family and friends. I'm just going to go through quickly the main outcomes of our surveys has been that young people are really concerned about their future. They don't have a place to access to quietly study. They don't have access to a computer, and given some of the conversations that we're going to have this morning about operating in a digital world, that's really concerning to us. These challenges aren't necessarily completely new for young people. Some of our young people have actually become more aware of their disadvantage at a time where they don't have a computer to operate in a digital space, and they also don't have, as I said, a quiet place to study. Our last reference point of a deep recession of this nature has been 2008, but we're really clear, and Tony will refer to some of the data in his presentation on the panel. We're really aware that this isn't going to be a quick bounce back. This is new territory, and for many of our young people, this will be a completely new way of life. The impact that we're expecting on young people is huge. So how is ThinkForward part of the solution? Well, effectively, we work with employers currently, and we want to basically leverage out more of that work, make sure that the tailored opportunities that we provide young people with are actually helping them navigate new industries. We know that some of the industries that are really impacted, such as retail and hospitality, are the kind of typical onboarding ways in which young people get into the labour market. Those potentially aren't going to be available to them. So we need to make sure that we're helping them understand what the new opportunities look like. We believe our coaching model is transformational. We believe that our young people work with coaches over a long period of time, which allows them to essentially access their full potential. We're really committed as an organisation to increasing our own digital capacity, despite some of the hitches this morning, first thing. We have some partners working with us. One of the schools here this morning is also attending here today, is also supporting our development, Greenwood Academies, and we're really, really grateful for them supporting our capacity, but also helping us to develop ways in which we will access young people in a digital space. Helping young people, as I mentioned, understand the new landscape, understand what the new opportunities look like, and making sure they understand that what's available for them and helping them navigate that. We have really strong relationships with our employers and with our corporates, and we have really, really great work readiness opportunities for them and work experience and insight days. We'd actually like to extend some of our responsibilities in having more strategic conversations with employers around what job opportunities look like for young people, including having conversations about how they're using their apprenticeship levy. We had a graduating group in the summer. We didn't let them go. We're actually going to work with them for longer because we're so concerned about the world that they're graduating into. And we really want to make sure that they are safely and securely, they have mapped out a path, if you like, for their future. Before I introduce the video, I'll hand over to Rosa, our moderator for the day, and our fantastic panel, who will give you some real food for thought in terms of some of the challenges that our young people are facing. I want to share a video with you of our young people, the only people that really matter in this morning's discussion and debate. They want to share their experiences with you and their hopes for the future. I hope you enjoy the morning. I hope you get involved and engaged in the debate, and I hope that you leave today having deeply reflected on a way in which you can support Think Forward as an organisation, but also the young people that we work with. Enjoy the day. Thank you.
Before Think Forward, my life was a bit all over the place. I didn't know where I was going career-wise, and like during GCSE time, it was mainly one of the points where I was majorly stuck, and I didn't know like what I was gonna do, like if I was gonna get the grades I needed. And Think Forward provided me with a lot of support and pointed me forward into the career that I wanted.
Life before Think Forward was very hard. It was very hard because before Think Forward there was no one to guide you, and there was no one to tell you, and there was no one to sit with you and have conversations about what you want. It was sort of all like you have to figure it out yourself, which is so wrong. And to be fair, I didn't know what I'm doing next year, hopefully, is called an internship, but I didn't know that there's such thing as an internship. I thought that it was just school, college, university. That was like the only path that I knew. I didn't know that I could take a different path. I'm taking a different path to everyone else, and that's okay.
Before I joined Think Forward, my teachers always used to say I can be good at times but also a bit cheeky and answer back.
My teachers would say I'm not focused, really naughty, and I wouldn't have a good future.
Life like before Think Forward was kind of hard for me, as that I was always in an exclusion room, I always got in trouble, and the teachers like thought I was bad and stuff like that. But obviously when I joined, like I started getting more positive feedback.
One of the biggest challenges that I faced before I joined the programme was asking people for help. However, over the Think Forward experience that I've had and still yet to have, I've had that confidence boost where I can ask people for help whenever I need it.
Life was not easy. I started to misbehave at school. I didn't share my worries with anyone. People say that I wasted my potential, but I was misunderstood.
For me, lockdown has affected me the most from the cancellation of my GCSE exams. Obviously that was a big shock for me. It's something I've been working towards for the last 5 years.
Lockdown was very stressful because I work in the hospitality industry, and that particular industry was hit very bad, and a lot of jobs are still at risk.
So lockdown for me wasn't great. It was very hard and it was very challenging, but with the help of Vinny, the amazing Vinny, I really got through it, and I definitely found out what my interests are and what I want to do as a job.
For my future, I want security and stability in the sense that I can live the life I want to live. Career-wise, I want to know that I can get to that place that I want to get, where I'm now happy.
My challenges for this year is to win the league in football and do good in my GCSEs and mocks.
I want to get really good grades in maths and science to become an electrician.
For my future, I hope to have a successful placement in the media industry.
For my future, I want to be a personal trainer to help people get fit and to make them love themselves, also because I'm really competitive at sports and I love it.
In the future, I would like to become a healthcare assistant and work with the NHS.
For my future, I would like to change professions and join the police force. And also when I join the police force, I would like to change how young people view the police.
Brilliant. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosa Morgan-Baker and I'm Director of Development at the Skills Builder Partnership, and it's my pleasure to be with you today to chair this panel. So while we're kind of getting started, I'll just invite our panelists to join me up on screen. If you'd like to press the share button, fantastic. Excellent stuff. Now this morning, kind of over the next 20 minutes, we'll be hearing some some thoughts from our panel, and we'll be then going into a time of questions and answers where you as our audience can either join us up on stage or submit your questions through the chat at the side of the screen. Before we dive into that, I'm going to be asking each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and we're going to be asking kind of the question around what was your first job, be that an informal or a formal or informal job. What was your first job? So I'm going to go straight over to Jill to start off with.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Jill Baker. I have just retired from being a head teacher in the London Borough Tower Hamlets George Wings School. Very proud to see some of my young people in that video just there. My first job, in fact, was in retail, and I'm very old, as you can tell. In those days, there was no internet, so the only way to get a job was to actually walk the streets. And I literally, when I was 16, I knew I had to get some pocket money somehow. So I literally walked the streets of Birmingham city centre, presented myself at every manager of every shop until I got a job. It took me about 6 weeks, and when I finally ended up working in Lewis's department store, a bit like Debenhams, in the sports department. But it was quite difficult, quite challenging. However, I don't think it was as challenging as our young people face today.
Great, thanks, Jill. And Rebecca, how about you? What was your first job?
Hi, morning. Yeah, Rebecca. I work for ICG, and I'm also a business mentor with some of the students with ThinkForward. My first job, was with Iceland, and that will be actually quite entertaining for anyone that knows me, because I'm always cold, and I actually hate being cold. And then it's in the name. Iceland was like a fridge. It was freezing working there. How did I get that? So I actually did take my CV over to Iceland, asked to speak to the manager, and said I was available on the weekends or after college in the evening. And yeah, he hired me on the spot. I will admit it didn't really last too long, but but yeah, that was a great introduction to the working world.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Rebecca. And Tony, would you like to introduce yourself, and what was your first job?
Hi everyone, sorry about that. I was too far away from my router. I'm closer now. So let's see if this works. So hi, I'm Tony Wilson. I'm the director at the Institute for Employment Studies. My first job was as a paperboy when I was about 14, I think, which was then followed by another job as a paperboy, and then a job as a cleaner, and then selling double glazing, and then selling double glazing for somebody else, then working in McDonald's, and then various other things. I think I had in total 13 jobs before I got to university, which was quite a lot. And I sort of learned two things really. One is like your first job isn't your dream job, and sometimes it's just about helping to get some money and get some experience, meet new people and things. But I think also, I think looking back on it now, I think a lot of young people don't get the same opportunities that I had, and that people my age, I suppose, had 20 or more years ago. There was a lot more jobs like that in those days, and I think there's so much value from getting that sort of experience when you're young. So I'm really keen that that's one of the things we really look at, how we can help people to combine work and study, work and education, and get employers more engaged in that as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tony. And Minister, tell us about your experience. Please do introduce yourself, and what was your first job?
So my name is Diana Barron, and I'm the Minister for Civil Society in the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport. And you spotted my digital skills by how long it took me to log in. So my first job, actually, it's just making me feel anxious just thinking about it. It was so ghastly. My first job was a holiday job on a pick-your-own strawberry farm, where I sat on my own on a wooden sort of crate, and I had to weigh people's strawberries when they'd finished picking. And there was, days would go by where nobody came to pick. So it was certainly gave me the drive to find something better, I think is the best thing I can say about it.
Great. I'm loving the varied experiences that we've got on the panel so far. Chloe, over to you. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your first experience of the world of work?
Hello, good morning everybody. I'm Chloe and I work at LEAP Confronting Conflict as a project officer there. My first job was an informal job, just working for my auntie. I used to go to her house every Saturday, from Hackney to Crystal Palace to clean. But my first formal job was an apprenticeship at ThinkForward, and I was a youth engagement support apprentice. So that was my first formal job.
Excellent, brilliant, thank you. And we'll come back to kind of your experience in a little bit. And Alex, welcome to the panel. Could you introduce yourself and share your first role?
I'm Alex Norris. I'm a Parliament for Nottingham North and been with for a few years now. So I think 16. I thought I need to come back. My mum's not giving me hair. Loads of CVs. This is what to do. Print off. One in basically everywhere. All of that. So one of the choice I worked in the kitchen of an Italian restaurant. Absolutely loved that job. You know, I've got A-levels basically just managed how that I last 5 years of school and that's still really fond think of and I still encounter a lot of people that I used to work with.
Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry, but your audio keeps cutting in and out. I don't know if maybe you could do a Tony and get a bit closer to the router or something like that. That might help.
Perhaps connect me in a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back to you in a tick. Before I kind of welcome the panel to answer our key question for this morning, I'm going to kind of turn to you, the audience, kind of look at the poll that we had earlier. So when you came in, you may have seen a poll down the right-hand side, which asked you what was your first job. Now, having a little look at the results, we have most popular being retail and hospitality with 49% of you, and I must say that I'm in that 49%. My first job was working as a waitress in a hotel restaurant. I had it as my year 10 work experience and still found myself there 5 years later. With the second being closely followed up 34% with being a paper round. And it's really funny, I went into a school recently and we had lots of volunteers who were saying that kind of their first job was a paper round, and the students were really just looking at us really blankly like, what is a paper round? So we had to say it was like when you get Google News alerts, but physical ones to your door. The world is changing so rapidly, and so is the labour market. And for young people, especially the beneficiaries of ThinkForward, the young people that ThinkForward support, kind of those gateway opportunities to be able to go into the world of work, as Ashley was saying earlier, are shutting down, and never more than they are at the moment, with things like the furlough scheme in place and the hospitality industry in particular being really hard hit. So kind of over the next few minutes, what we'll be looking at is what options are there for young people, how can young people continue to engage with the labour market, and what can be done to really help people to move forward kind of through this time and kind of into the times to come. So I'm going to kind of open up to the panel now and ask kind of our key question for this morning. Panelists, you'll have about 2 to 3 minutes to be able to answer this question, and we want to make sure we've got enough time for questions from our audience a little bit later. So I'm going to go to Chloe first, actually, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off. And the question here is, are there any practical things that you feel that employers or government could do to support young people who are looking for employment during these really challenging times?
Of course, thank you. I'd love to kick off. I think there's loads of practical and urgent things that the sector needs to do to support young people to compete in such a competitive market. And when I look back at my experience going into the world of work, I was so lucky to have an apprenticeship which really propelled me into the working world. I was only 16 years old when I got my apprenticeship at ThinkForward, and I didn't realize how important that was going to be for my journey in the working world. I'm only 22 now. I'm working as a project worker for LEAP, which is an amazing charity, and it's a permanent role. So I could be there for the next couple of years and then go on to do something else that's amazing. So I think there's an immediate support there for young people, which needs to be around supporting their mental health, because young people have experienced so much during this time. So there needs to be support for loss, for anybody that's lost somebody during the pandemic. There needs to be more DV support for young people who may be experiencing domestic violence. Like, these are all the primary stuff that needs to be done before you even think about supporting a young person to get into a job. So and as well, housing has been a massive issue as well. A lot of people have become homeless or had to move back in with their parents because they lost where they was living before. So I think that's the urgent and immediate support. But going on from that, I think as a sector we could do more to get young people into the world of work. So supporting to maybe start up apprenticeships, internships, traineeships, and also voluntary opportunities. I know I kind of got a kickstart into the world of work also through a lot of voluntary opportunities. So even supporting young people to be a part of consultations and decision-making processes. So one of the apprenticeships that I done after I done Think Forward was for a charity called Young Lambeth Cooperative. And they had a business model where they would get young people involved with decision-making. So definitely youth boards, even getting young people involved in youth boards and ambassador roles. I'm currently a vice chair for the Youth Independent Advisory Board at Scotland Yard. And opportunities like that are also amazing for young people to put on their CV to show that they're actively involved in wanting to make a change. I would love to see more people in like government and parliament having positions like this for young people as well. So I think, yeah, and also industry experience. So big organizations, the youth sector making collaborative opportunities where young people can get involved. But I'm also an alumni for Think Forward, so I was a young person who went through the program from 14 to 18 or 19. I can't remember the exact number, but I got an opportunity to have a work placement at Talk's head office when I was about 15, and that was an amazing opportunity as well. And with that, didn't think it was as special as it would, but it did have a big impact on me because I always looked at that as a part of the working world, and I got to go and work in their offices, and it just gave me a good idea of what it's like to be in the working world. So I would say those are mine.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think kind of as I think you and Tony, you both touched on this in terms of you never know kind of where an opportunity is going to lead. You start off with your plan A. I know I'm definitely on plan J, K, somewhere down the alphabet. And each of these opportunities, all of the different chances that you get to be able to try something new, to be able to dip into another sphere of work really helps to shape kind of your path going forward. Thanks so much, Chloe. And we're going to go over to Minister now. Can you just tell us a little bit about kind of like within your sphere of influence, what do you feel is the most pragmatic thing that we can do to urgently support young people to improve their chances during this turbulent time?
Well, thank you for the question. Thank you, Chloe. You stole some of my remarks, so we're in violent agreement about lots of the things that you mentioned. I suppose what I wanted to say first in terms of, I don't know whether it's answering your question, but I think there's something about how we approach this. And I was struck, I was looking at some of the research that was published after Hurricane Katrina, which some of you may have looked at, which is obviously not the same as what we're going through, but has got some parallels in terms of disruption to young people's lives and schooling. And it was really clear that those young people who felt they were part of the solution, who came through best. So I think there's a mindset which is starting with the fact that young people are our greatest asset, have a huge amount to offer, and how do we channel that energy, those gifts, and actually, bluntly, also the kind of physical resilience in terms of the virus in a way that is positive. So I think some of the areas that we're looking at is absolutely around volunteering. That fits within my sphere of influence, and I'm fortunate to have a youth steering group who do their best to keep me on track in a very direct and genuinely very helpful way. So I think volunteering is a massive part of it. I think the other thing we can do as government, obviously, is convene, so we can bring people together. And I really am open to working with, anyone on the call in terms of if we can help. So to give you an example, we brought our youth steering group together with officials from DWP to talk through some of the changes to the benefits system and the Kickstart scheme, so they could hear firsthand. Because there's also a trust issue, isn't there, which I think we have to recognise, and a communication issue. So more than happy to help there. And then the other thing that is absolutely within our gift as government is to think, how do we spend taxpayers' money to best effect? Clearly, the Chancellor has focused very much on employment with Kickstart scheme, but in a much smaller way. We're trying very hard within the department to make sure, and working with organisations like the National Youth Agency, to make sure that youth workers are recognised as key workers, that youth work out of doors in particular can continue, and also working with philanthropists and other funders. And obviously we announced major funding of our own, much of which has gone to particularly around mental health, loneliness, and a significant portion directly to youth charities. So that's a sort of sense of what I think is the art of the possible.
Great, thank you. And I think just thinking about that national picture and kind of what can be done kind of nationwide to be able to support young people is really, really important. And Alex, let's see if we can come back to you. Hopefully, come on, fingers crossed for the internet to be working. Can you tell us kind of from a local perspective, really? Because I guess kind of with you being MP for Nottingham and kind of local lockdown occurring, kind of where do you feel kind of the most urgent things are to be able to improve young people's life chances on a local level, and how can people continue to kind of move out of this time?
How can we through now?
We can try it for a sec. Let's see if it gets better.
I'll keep the thing that I'm really keen on work experience, that chatting, whether mentoring my friend John Peel on beauty great. And I've never criticised parents, family that are better off, that are traditional families are better at organising these sort of opportunities. I would knock that. But what I would say is that I reach out proactively to try and find new people in our community who benefit from these opportunities. The great thing about it is you have to look very far in these things in school. So if you go and you support the ThinkForward model, then they find young people prosper and have a great opportunity in the organisation.
Great, thank you. And Tony, how about you? Kind of from your perspective, kind of where do you feel kind of the biggest wins that we can make are at the moment? Any? Oh, I don't know if anyone else has lost Tony. I feel Tony may have shied a little bit further away from the router. Never mind, we'll come back to Tony in a sec. Rebecca, would you like to step in from kind of an employer perspective? Yeah, tell us your views.
Yeah, definitely. With the question about pragmatic, I guess what we have proven as a nation is that we can create, and we have created, a virtual economy. Maybe what we haven't done necessarily is bring young people into this thought process. And I think it's very important that we, again, bring them back into the conversation and understand how we can do that. So for me, the most pragmatic thing we can do is keep doing what we were doing before, have safeguards in place, and then bring it into a virtual world. So we can have virtual work experience, virtual mentoring and coaching sessions. And I also think some sort of certification. So if we do workshops, you know, a lot of the big businesses, financial services industry, we can do workshops, we can offer young people certificates that they can take with them, put on their CV, and then bring it back when the economy does its U-turn. And I think those are very easy things to do. What just needs to happen is that we need to bring young people back into the conversation. And that is another reason why I'm such a big fan of Think Forward. You guys really do important work, and you make sure that no child is left behind. You know, it's all good giving praise to those who are active and getting A stars and et cetera, but what about all the other children? They're still important, and they still need to see that there's a future after this very uncertain time. But yeah, that's what I would put forward as a pragmatic and very urgent and easily done thing that the businesses and the financial services industry can do.
Absolutely. And I guess kind of for you, Jill, kind of making sure that no child is left behind is really core to everything that you've kind of been doing throughout your time. So can you tell us a little bit, kind of as a teacher and kind of as an educationalist, tell us a little bit about kind of what you feel the most pragmatic things that we can do to support young people through this time are?
Okay, someone who's just retired from the education sector after 30 plus years, I don't think I've ever known a context more challenging for young people than the one they face now. And I feel young people need our support and need it urgently, as I'm sure we'll agree. It's critical for our futures to ensure we avoid a generation who don't work, because they'll face a long future of unemployment, which will impact on the economic prosperity of us all. In trying to think of those key things that schools can do and education can do to make a difference, I think they're probably doing all of them and more. So what I'm going to do is make a plea for some crucial action from others here with more power and influence than me. To enter the job market with confidence, I feel that young people need a set of exam results that reflect their abilities. It's almost too obvious to state, but I feel I need to say this. We're now in October and still not sure what is happening with exams in the summer. Concerned about equality, the mental health of students, and their long-term job prospects, students and teachers need to know the details of Plan A and Plan B now and not in several weeks' time. Otherwise, we're going to be left with the sorry situation of last year. Disadvantaged young people and young people with special educational needs require additional support, particularly at the moment, and are likely to be forgotten as the crisis embeds. Robust careers education and the resilience of young people to navigate this complex and fast-changing employment market, in my view, are very closely linked. And this is really more true of the group of young people I'm talking about. But schools are too hard pushed at the moment to be successful in this area because they are simply struggling to cover what they need to cover for exams. Anything even vaguely extra is going to disappear. So I feel we need to support this group of young people. There are several initiatives around, I know, that to support young people to counteract the impact of COVID. One of these I would like to shout out for is career hubs. They're very good at supporting young people, and it has been announced that this network of hubs is going to be expanded to cover half of all state schools. I don't think this is enough. I would like it to cover all of state schools to provide national coverage. And in addition, I'd like our young disadvantaged and young people with special needs to be prioritised for support from these hubs, because money spent in this way now could avoid a long-term cost of young people on benefits and also support the future of our economy. I'd just like to say as well, I became a trustee of ThinkForward after witnessing firsthand the power of the ThinkForward coaching model and the way the coaches provide a bridge between education and employment for some of our most needy young people, as you saw in that video. In fact, some of those young people were from my school. So we're serious about closing this gap and supporting these young people through the current crisis. I don't think we could do anything better than to provide a ThinkForward type coach for all our disadvantaged young people. Many of them require so much support that schools simply don't have the capacity to do this. And whilst this is expensive, I think it actually saves money in the long run. But my plea to everybody is whatever happens, we need to take action now to support our young people, because if we don't, we'll all pay dearly, not just the young people.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jill. And Tony, let's see if we can circle back to you. The power of the internet.
Hi, I'm back. Apologies for that. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Amy said at the start that I'd give some stats and numbers and things, so I'll just start with that for a second, then I'll say about what I think the single most important thing we could do is. So I suppose this bit of context. I mean, this is the biggest crisis, labour market crisis that we've experienced in at least a generation, and it's probably the biggest crisis that young people in a longer time than that. On the latest figures published this week, 3/5 of the fall in employment, 60% of the total fall in employment was amongst young people since the crisis began. And the fall in youth employment over just the last quarter was more than 200,000. And this is the biggest fall in youth employment that we've ever seen, actually, since records began, since they started recording this data, which was in about 1992. So, we're already seeing, even with all of the measures we've introduced to protect workers and support households, we're already seeing really huge impacts on young people. And I think there's a kind of triple whammy here. The first is really significant impacts on employment, driven in particular because young people are more likely to be in less secure work, and they're more likely to be in the sectors that have been most affected by the crisis. So in addition to those really significant falls in employment, we've also got 2/5 of young people were furloughed during the crisis, which is an extraordinary figure. 2/5 of all youth employment, I should say, not all young people, all young people in work were furloughed. And the second bit of the triple whammy is that hiring has really slowed down. Vacancies are down by 1/3 on what they were before the crisis. And this is a point really when we should be seeing that bouncing back, and inevitably, as we're entering a kind of a second wave, there's much more uncertainty. Things are actually getting tougher to hire. And young people really lose out when hiring slows down, because they're more likely to be looking for work at any point in time. And the third is obviously the huge impacts on education and the disruption people have had, which we've already heard about. So this is, really tough times. What's the single most important thing we can do? I mean, I would say one good bit of news is that all those exits from employment has also been accompanied by a lot more young people staying in education, and that's positive as long as that's good, good quality learning that's going to support, human capital and increase their chances in the future. So I think the more of that we can do, particularly in the crisis, the better. Single most important thing, in a nutshell, I think, is to reach young people. It's to talk to and engage with and find every young person, and particularly those who are most disadvantaged, those who have gone past the point of transition. We're quite good at dealing with people at the point of transition, quite good. When you get beyond that point, I think we really struggle. And already, even before the crisis, there are 1 million young people not in education, employment, or not in full-time education, employment, or training. So we've got to reach those young people. And then I think it's by reaching them, we can then deliver a really good quality guarantee. And I'm really, really passionately believe we need to deliver on the opportunity guarantee the Prime Minister announced. And that should be a guarantee of good quality education, learning or training, or a guarantee of a job for all young people by the time certainly before you reach long-term worklessness or long-term disadvantage. And I think that can then drive the system change that we need, which needs to be about a much more coherent, more localised, more aligned, more integrated system. It's a terribly fragmented mess. And we hear this a lot in our engagement and interviews and our research with young people. If we can deliver that kind of system change, really clear accountabilities and leadership for helping young people, and then we need to intervene as well, as others have said, at the other end of the equation with employers to create opportunities, including for opportunities for young people in education. The employment rate for young people in education is virtually halved in the last 30 years. But also in creating really good quality routeways in the education and training system. And I think in particular that means vocational education. You know, we've talked about this for decades. Got to get it right. We're letting down far too many people with poor quality vocational routes that don't link up with labour market demand. So that's a lot in there. I think it starts from reaching young people. And yes, I think as others have said, that then means the one-to-one support, the coaching and the really effective careers, employment and training support alongside. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. I think kind of, across the panel, everyone's in complete agreement over the need to really reach out to young people and just provide practical support and guidance kind of right now. I can see at the side that the chat is going a little bit crazy and lots of people absolutely agreeing with what's being said, which is great. And I'd like to really open it up to the audience now to either submit your questions or come up on stage to share your questions with the panel, and we can kind of have a bit more of a discussion there. I'm gonna ask Ashley to come up and join us. I think Ashley, you've got a question.
Hi, can you see and hear me this time?
All the technology, it's working, go for it.
Apologies for earlier cutting out tech issues. I just wanted to touch on one of the things that was in our survey for young people. We've talked a lot about pragmatic solutions, and we've heard a lot from the panel. In our survey, in the young people that we surveyed, over 35% of them have no access to IT, no tech, no laptops, and no Wi-Fi. And 36% of them don't have actually a comfortable place to learn and study, a space that they can actually quietly kind of concentrate in a digital world. And at ThinkForward, we have supported young people actually accessing hardship grants locally. We're working on the ground with local community organisations who are giving out grants. We've got some corporate supporters that have gifted us technology for some of our young people. I know schools are working hard to make sure that young people are accessing as much as they can. And I know that government have had a scheme for year 10 and 11. I just wonder if anyone on the panel, maybe the Minister might say a few words on this. It feels to me like one of the greatest and most powerful things that we can do for our young people right now is to try and make sure that they have access to high quality tech, and they can enter into and actually start experiencing what it's like to develop skills in a world of technology, in a digital world. I just wondered if panel had any thoughts on that.
Do you want me to come in first, Ashley?
That would be amazing, thank you.
I'll do my best. So you're quite right, we did bring in the scheme for year 10 and year 11. We've also been working with organisations like Devices.now, trying to get equipment out to people of all ages. Also looking at digital literacy skills. And most recently, we had a match funding program with philanthropists, and one of the large grants that we gave out in that was for exactly this, was for an academy school network providing tablets to kids in their schools who had no access. So you make a very important point. I think we can only agree, and we're working on it in a number of different ways.
Can I come in here, actually?
Yeah, sure.
One of the issues, my school is very close, or was, I should say, I've just left, I've got to get used to this, is very close to Canary Wharf. And obviously thousands and thousands of businesses with computers that they regularly change. And one of the key issues preventing this tech kit, once it's sort of past its sell-by date with the companies, getting to young people, was this whole thing about data security. And I think if somebody could come up with a solution to sorting out data security, or making sure computers are clean and wipe clean, this problem will almost go away, because there are thousands of computers we know about sitting and they get dumped in trash because because of this issue, and if they could be handed to young people. I mean, I don't know. I say this as somebody who's tried to battle with this and get these machines to young people. I don't know.
Yeah.
It would sort out an awful lot of issues.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
Jill.
you. I've got a question here coming in from the chat for Tony. In kind of how do we then deliver such change? Does it need to come from the top down, how do employers get involved? And that's from Solly Pombo.
Yeah, so I think, like, pragmatically, where we are right now, we to some extent we have to just get on with it as best we can within the sort of the institutional setups that we've got, which are a mess. You know, we have like 5 different government departments with responsibility for young people at different points in their transition from education to employment. We've got about 7 or 8 different funding, like government agencies or bits of government that are funded to deliver stuff. We've got about 30 or 40 different programs. I've written a report about this called Work Local with the LGA a few years ago. It is a complete mess. But we're not going to have massive machinery of government changes in the middle of a pandemic to create a Ministry for Youth Transitions or a single youth employment and skills service, which is what I'd love us to do. But in the meantime, what we can do, I think, is government departments can give people the sort of framework and the permission to get on and make this work locally. And actually through youth hubs, which are being rolled out now by Job Centre Plus in partnership with community and voluntary organisations, we've got a really good, and local government, we've got a really good opportunity to get Job Centre Plus advisors and work coaches who I really rate. You know, they get a lot of criticism, but they're a real resource. You know, working with their badges off in the community, in community settings, get career services alongside, and get colleges and education providers, schools and others, and the voluntary and community sector in that space as well. And then let's just, really work together to share the information that we need in order to reach the right young people. That data exists. We've got it. Let's find those young people, engage with them, reach them, and start to deliver those services. But it really does require like the permission, the authority to do it. I think it really needs really good local sort of oversight as well, in terms of the sort of governance and the managerial level sort of oversight to make these things work. But it's well within our gift to do it, and there's huge appetite to do this. Huge appetite in local government, and now in DWP as well, and others. I think engaging employers is harder. We're seeing that already with Kickstart. One thing I didn't say was, please, everybody try to get behind Kickstart and make really good quality jobs as well. Good jobs, good opportunities. Engaging employers is harder, but wow, I think the way that the organisations like the Federation of Small Businesses, Chambers of Commerce and others have got behind the Plan for Jobs has been fantastic. So let's harness that. And again, local government is working a lot with business now, mainly to deliver grants to help keep the wheels on the road. But that's a real opportunity too. So yeah, there's a lot we need to do, but we've got the people, we've got people who want to do it. If we're prepared to invest in it and give people the permission, then I think we can make it happen.
And Rebecca, perhaps you can come in on this, kind of like from an employer perspective, kind of where do you feel that there can really be that drive from employers to be able to provide those opportunities for young people at the moment?
Yeah, I guess from my experience, so ICG, we do partner with ThinkForward, and in the days when we were allowed to have touch points, obviously we had the students come in and would have business mentoring relationships. I guess during the lockdown period and all this change, been stopped or put on hold. Obviously, we've got to think of the safety of the children, and not having, I guess, virtual access without the safeguards has made it a bit difficult. But yeah, practically that is something that can be done. In a session like this, for example, we could have young people join and we could do the same sort of mentoring, looking at their CVs, looking at their personal statements, looking at any applications that they have, giving them interview coaching. There's a lot of stuff that we can do in this kind of forum. And again, it's just about all the things that are going on, but putting young people back on the agenda. And I think we can definitely think of different ways to bring them back into the forefront and give them the experiences that we were giving them before.
Great. And Chloe, kind of what are your thoughts kind of on this, in terms of like from a younger person's perspective, kind of where do you feel kind of that support can be coming from employers at the moment?
I think the support would be coming from around personal branding in general. I just wrote it in the chat. I think young people understanding the phrase key person of influence and like them understanding what does that actually mean to you? Do you understand what that phrase is? Because having a CV is a part of your personal branding. When you send it to someone, it's a showcase of who you are and what you do. So, but personal branding is also, it's your LinkedIn. Getting young people started up on LinkedIn is essential. I don't remember anybody at school. I don't know if LinkedIn was around when I left school, but nobody really spoke to me about personal branding. And it is really essential, especially when you're going into a competitive world. You have to have things about you that stand out. And I've been lucky where I've been nominated for different, and even when I put that on my CV, it says a lot. And even getting young people to understand being involved in things, saying that you was active in decision making, you was an ambassador for an organization, you're an alumni, it does play a part. Even saying that you was mentored by ThinkForward, it plays a part in employers seeing you as an asset to their organization. So I would say that's definitely, personal branding is big for me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially kind of in terms of thinking around how to showcase and articulate your skills, and really think about actually what employers are looking for, and having how to showcase yourself to employers, helping people to be able to do that through that really competitive market. Is really key. Another question kind of that's coming through from Elnaz Kashef on the panel, to the panel even. If there's no actual job creation and employment opportunities, how can young people continue to go up the career ladder? And I'm going to go over to the Minister to kind of kick us off on that part.
Well, I guess it depends a bit on your age, and I think it is a bit harsh to say there are no opportunities. So we do know that the tech sector is still recruiting actively, and there are jobs in that area, and there are certain skills that you need, whether it be coding or other sales and other skills. But I think it is a little bit harsh to say that there are none. But otherwise, I think that preparatory work, showing that you are the sort of person who can take the initiative, take part in things, and obviously we all need help to do that. I'm not saying this is all down to young people on their own, but all of the sort of having volunteering on your CV, and having been part of things at school sends a message that you're the sort of person who's going to get stuck in the workplace. Plus, I imagine it gives you the confidence to then be successful in the workplace. But there is no magic wand at a time when so many jobs are being lost, and that's why, to go back to the Kickstart scheme, I think it is really important, because it gives young people great experience over 6 months and takes the risk away, if you like, for employers in doing that. Makes it very easy for employers to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of from some of the employers that we've been speaking to over the last few weeks, there are some amazing plans being put in place for young people to support them via the Kickstart programme, and to really think about how they can use that opportunity as a springboard into their future careers, and ensure that they do leave with not only the experience but also the skills to be able to move into other roles. And I feel that there seems to be a real passion from employers to think about actually the type of support that they can provide to young people at that time, as they kind of go through their Kickstart programme. Brad, thanks for joining us up on stage. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. I'm the regional delivery manager of ThinkForward. Obviously, we I think that we were talking about their first jobs were shops. Given that businesses, how do we support the transport infrastructure, so costs, so that young people, particularly in those areas that aren't London or big cities, are able to cast their net further afield, so that they're able to get more experience.
Great. I'm going to pass over to Alex on that one. So I think it's kind of around kind of how can we make sure that the infrastructure is there to support young people. Sorry, Brad, it was cutting out a little bit. So to summarise, I think it's right around how can we make sure that the infrastructure is there kind of at a local and national level to be able to support young people.
I mean, I think, and again, my Brad, I'll put. I strongly believe, in the importance of using local authority, not to these hold the ribbon to provide a structure for these sort of opportunities. Employers have to more engage with sort of liaison schools. I think that we have best successful and coordinated through that council. I just wanted to say, Rose, that in a couple of minutes I'm have to let you off because I'm asking you a question today, but I think if in terms of moving Parliament, I'm sure, or what later, I'm going to give them a shout out. So.
I am so sorry that it's cutting out so much. I really can't hear you. Can you pop it in the chat and I'll keep an eye out. Thanks so much, Alex. I'm going to kind of put that question out to Tony as well. Then, kind of in terms of infrastructure, what else do you feel that we could be putting in place to support kind of young people?
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two points there. One is we've had a long run reduction in sort of funding in local government and in voluntary and community sector, and I don't think there's any sort of way we can get around that. That's where we are. By funding, I mean kind of central government funding, and a greater reliance, particularly in VCS, on sort of charitable and philanthropic giving. And so I do think that has reduced our. There's no way around that now. That's reduced the capacity to respond quickly in this crisis. So I think it is something we do need to address. But there's quite a specific point as well, which is the impacts of this pandemic. It's been really hard for local government, as it has for national government, as it has for any number of community organisations, to set up their places of work or their places of engagement in a COVID secure way. And that's going to be even harder in the next few months, when I think it's very likely we're going to face a lot tougher restrictions everywhere. I think that, it was mentioned at the start, but actually about investment in digital, I think is really important, and a lot of smaller organisations find that harder, clearly. But I think the more we can try to do quickly to try to free up resource and to support a move to more digital delivery, but also to help organisations locally to share space, to use bigger spaces, use partner premises and things, the better. But there's no, this is a uniquely challenging and difficult time, I think. And in some respects, I think we need to be laying the groundwork now for what we can do in the coming year as well. We're not going to solve everything in the next few months. This is such a tough time, I think.
Yeah, it is completely uncharted territory kind of for everyone, and making sure that wraparound support is available, and kind of thinking about actually how we can kind of put things in place at every level wherever we can is really important. And Jill, there's a question that's come through kind of around actually how can we support parents kind of through this time as well? Are there any kind of things that you've been kind of discussing with colleagues around actually how can parents be supported to help their children at this point?
Parents need a lot of support and encouragement, because I think a lot of parents are also going through employment difficulties, particularly in areas like East London, and other areas where there's high levels of disadvantage. Parents themselves are becoming unemployed, and sometimes it's multiple layered, and so there need to be services to support adults through those processes as well. But also, I think what's happening a little bit in Tower Hamlets is they're using the local offer. So if adults want to go onto a website, there are lots of signposting for help there where adults can go. But actually, it is really hard to know what to say to parents, in all honesty. But I do believe there should be support mechanisms in place. And I think I just want to pick up a little bit on the bit about a local authority. Alex was mentioning about trying to be the first point of call for young people. They can also be the first point of call for parents as well, because they are actually involved all the time communicating about the impact of COVID and sort of like, for example, the campaign to get children back to school after the lockdown. Many local authorities engage lots of parents at that. So it's at that level that I think it needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got another question that's just come through here from Kate, which is, what does the panel think could be done to increase the amount of apprenticeships, and how can we make these more accessible to young people? I'm going to go to Rebecca for that one.
Apprenticeship is something that maybe as a business we have not really thought about. So I think someone mentioned it in the chat box about educating the workplace about these things. So I think it is a case of we need to be pushed that direction. And I think a lot of people are experiencing their own kind of with COVID. We are still open and willing to support and help more at-risk and vulnerable people in this time. And I think that's just shown itself time and time again. So again, maybe the point is that the workplace needs to be educated on what we can offer and pushed and seeing what we can bring to the table and help in any kind of out-of-the-box ways that we probably haven't even already thought about. So apprenticeships, I don't think we've ever offered apprenticeships in the past, but that's not to say that we would turn our nose to it. It's not for me to make that decision, but in general, if I was a standalone organisation and someone came to me and said, this is what apprenticeships can mean to young people, and this is how they can engage with the workforce, is this something you've considered? And I think, yeah, it would open up the discussion and we can move it forward. I also think it's a case of we should be more forefront in asking and taking up space and not being shy or scared or fear and rejection when you're going to organisations and ask them to step up and be involved and in making sure that young people are not left behind after this pandemic.
And Minister, is there anything you wanted to kind of to add on that?
Apprenticeships. I mean, I think the only thing is to say that we're very committed to both apprenticeships and traineeships. I mean, the funding for apprenticeships is about 2.5 billion currently, which is about double what it was 10 years ago. So this is an area that we very much support, and we're also trying, our ambition is to triple the number of traineeships. So we think these are really helpful planks in a strategy to support young people into employment.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. I know kind of you shared in the chat a link to the toolkit, skills called toolkit, which would be great for people to go through at some point after this session.
Can I just say though on that? I mean, I think I don't know whether others agree, but we absolutely, as government, should do things like the skills toolkit. But I think most people look to their peers and say to them, what worked for you? So when Chloe talks about having a LinkedIn profile, I'm guessing your friends are going to listen to you more than they're going to listen to government. When government says have a LinkedIn profile, I hope people respond. But I think there's something about how, it is your peers and seeing what works for your peers. I think that is also really, really powerful. So I think young people should speak up about what's worked for them as well as where they've hit a roadblock.
Yeah, absolutely. Chloe, was there anything you wanted to add on that?
Everything that I thought has been said. I just second everything.
Excellent stuff. I think we've got time for one last question, and we're getting an awful lot of love for a question from Charlene and Theophile on the chat. So the final question to the panel here is, how do we bridge the gap between our education and labour sectors, ensuring that young people have the knowledge, skills and experience to enter the workforce? So what would be your one thing that you feel would help to bridge that gap for young people? I think I'll kick off kind of from a skills builder perspective. So in terms of ensuring that young people have those essential skills to be able to succeed, and kind of ensuring that we're all kind of on the same page in terms of using a common language and approach to developing those essential skills is really key. So things like teamwork and communication and problem solving, I think is really important, just giving them opportunities to do that within the world of work, within work experience. Things like the Kickstart programme will be fantastic opportunities for that. And I'm going to go over to Jill. What do you think is that one thing that we can do to ensure that young people are able to like bridge that gap between education and employment?
I think a lot of the things you're talking about I wholeheartedly agree with, and actually they are very much part of school life and school curriculum. One of the reasons I mentioned about career hubs before is that I do think that one of the issues is that teachers are not really ideally placed much of the time, because they don't have local market information. They don't really, they've never really been much part of this. And so one of the reasons I think that careers hubs are really important is that if you could have that relationship that schools use hubs, and then it becomes a natural support for the bridge, that it's a natural bridge for young people to continue to use those hubs after they've left school. And then at the other key transition points, you know, it would be great. That's why I think I really like the idea of those careers hubs, because I think it's tough. Schools and teachers find it very hard to advise young people. However, those skills that you talk about, teamwork and team building and all those kind of things, are very much part of school life.
Absolutely, and I think something that that ThinkForward, like through the mentoring programs, does absolutely brilliantly to enable young people to be able to see that in action, and to be able to kind of have that support to be able to not only develop those skills, but then also be able to articulate them so they can showcase them to employers. Rebecca, I'm going to hand over to you. What do you feel is kind of that thing to bridge the gap?
Yeah, so I will just follow on from your point about the mentorship. So my number one was visibility. And again, we do that with ThinkForward when we do the business mentoring. I know when I was in school, I had no idea about financial services. I'm a chartered accountant now, but when I was in school, no idea, never heard of it. Again, bringing them to the city, bringing them to meet people in that industry, it just will hopefully instill some sort of future aspiration. It maybe not in financial services, but at least they have the visibility of what is out there. And again, meeting people in that industry. I never met an accountant when I was in school, ever. Never even knew about it. But again, meeting people in that industry, and obviously now we're in a virtual economy, I still feel that it can be done. Asking again, you know, reaching out to your networks and asking them to sit and speak with the young people virtually. Absolutely. And again with the safeguards in place. Yeah,
and just kind of just tweaking the question slightly for you, Tony, in terms of actually how can we do that within a virtual world? Or what do you feel kind of the biggest thing to bridge that gap is for young people using these online platforms?
I think that's oh, that's thrown me. I was going to say something totally different.
Sorry, maybe it's a question. I shouldn't have given you a curveball.
No, that's okay. No, I think
what you were going to say.
I think it's a really good point, because I think one of the things that one of the things that we haven't talked about a huge amount is the impact the crisis had. You know, falling at just a point when a lot of people would have been really starting to. Well, a lot of people would have decided already what they were going to do next. But for those who are looking for work and in education, you know, losing that period from March onwards has been hugely impactful. There are a lot of online resources, but I think, you know, what we hear and what colleagues in Youth Employment UK hear is that often young people don't have, and particularly more disadvantaged young people don't have access to the Wi-Fi, to the technology, to do that. So I think actually, you know, trying to invest in the kit and help people get it is, I think, really, really important. In particular, access to, you know, free or cheap Wi-Fi. I think then, you know, there's a lot of online tools that are really good, but I think there's probably a bit too much, which is along the kind of what sort, you know, that we all did that career service beta platform thing recently. What sort of job do you want to do or whatever? Actually, you know, what people want is really practical, helpful advice about how to apply for jobs, how to look for jobs, and how to get on, particularly in, you know, working virtually in those first few weeks. So concentrating on that, I think, is really important. The one thing I was going to say, just on, this is my last chance on the mic, is if you get the opportunity to join the Youth Employment Group, for those who are really interested in these issues, please do. Set up by Youth Employment UK, Youth Futures, Impetus, Prince's Trust, and ourselves. And we've been doing a lot of what I've said today has been stuff that we've been doing through that group and advocating for. So if you're interested in joining up, just Google it or find us on LinkedIn. That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And Chloe, I just seen you put in the chat that you kind of feel that the Think Forward business mentoring is really great at kind of bridging that gap, which is brilliant. Can you just kind of say, just in a few short words, kind of what how you feel Think Forward really helped you to be able to bridge that gap?
Yeah, definitely. I was the first cohort that ever done business mentoring. So we was the guinea pigs of the business mentoring program. And I just remember after school, we used to go on the school bus to go up to the city. And the first place we ever done business mentoring was at the Gherkin. And we went to the top floor. And I just remember us always being really amazed and all this nice canapé food, and they used to make us little burgers and these little bread with the, you know, bruschetta, like they would make us little bruschettas and stuff. And we were just really interested in going and taking the Listerine out the bathroom. It wasn't really about the actual business mentoring experience. It was just about the experience of being in a building, city, and all the bright lights and everything. And then the second one that we ever went to was Ernest & Young. And it was just a great experience to be in the city within these big corporations and feel like, oh, like they want us here. We're the asset to them in a way. It's not the other way around. They actually want to meet us. And then I went on to train the business mentors, and that was really interesting as well. So yeah, I think business mentoring program is amazing.
Perfect. I think we've got time for one last one, so I'll go to you, Minister. Kind of where do you feel kind of that that bridge can be made? Oh, I think you're muted. Sorry.
Too. No, I was saying, I think it's sort of three things. One is the bit that's within the gift of the young person. So, you know, what can you do to make sure when you apply, the door is kept open? So just a tiny example that one of my kids was advised recently, who's applying for jobs, was, you know, their WhatsApp photo was with friends at a party. It now is him in a suit, you know, because friends at a party is possibly not the first image you want to give your future employer unless they're very broad-minded. So that's, you know, something that's within all our gifts, to kind of look professional or look appropriate for the job you're aspiring to. Secondly, I totally agree with Rebecca about making sure that we, you know, that all of us know what options are available to us, and to be able to look at things that maybe were not previously in your frame of reference. And then as government, we have to put in the kind of plumbing alongside young people and employers to make sure it works. And a lot of that plumbing at the moment is money through traineeships, through apprenticeships, through Kickstart and the other things that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent stuff. Well, thank you so much to our panelists. I think what we're going to do is we're going to continue the conversation over on the other chat, the what's it called, green room type chat. But what I'm going to do is invite Ashley to join us again, kind of just to wrap up from the day. Panelists, thank you so much.
Thank you everybody. That was amazing.
Thank you very
So
much.
to sort of finalise and wrap up the morning, I just want to say a huge thank you to Rosa for moderating, and of course to our panellists. We've talked a lot about employers and the responsibility of employers going forward. One of the observations I would make is organisations like ours who are working directly with young people and also have relationships with employers actually probably need to do more to help employers navigate actually what's quite a complex landscape in terms of how they might be able to offer young people opportunities. So I think there's a real role for us in the sector where we have strong relationships with employers. The call to action is really about what can you do in deep reflection, what can you do to help support young people into the labour market, you as an individual or you in the networks that you operate in. Really important to make the point that if there are places in which you could introduce us, we want to do more, we want to scale up, we want to help more young people, and we would be really keen to have a conversation with you about whether or not you feel there are networks that you could help support us to access so that we can start the conversation with employers about what youth opportunities look like going forward. Funding, we have to talk about funding. We are not a statutory funded organisation. We are a long-term programme. We deliver our coaching services over 5 years of a young person's life. We fundraise all of our income. We have about £500,000 still to make for this year. And we want to, as I said, we want to do more. We feel there is more need now more than ever. So if you or anyone has got some purse strings that you can unleash, that you can help support us access, then please do make sure you make contact with us. We would be incredibly grateful if we could continue doing the great work that we do and we could actually work with more young people. I think we also, as Rosa said, you will see on the right-hand side in the chat box, we are going to grab a cup of coffee and a comfort break, and we are going to continue the chat in a more informal way in a few moments. We would love for you to pop in and say hi and just give us your feedback and thoughts on how you think this morning went. Before I say goodbye and hand over to our last video, I just wanted to say again a huge thanks. We will also send out the chat box, the notes, the questions, and we'll also send out a recording, a link to the recording. So for those of you who feel like that you may have, there was a lot going on, there were a lot of really powerful points being made, so don't worry, you won't miss the opportunity to engage again. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our final clip of this morning. And I really, really, really want to say a huge thank you for everybody who contributed to this final clip, because it's lots of people saying really nice things about the work that they do with Think Forward. Thank you so much for participating. See you on the other side. Bye-bye.
Think Forward for us is one of our key interventions. We're really happy with our partnership with Think Forward. The work that we have with our current coach is phenomenal. Our coaches have worked really close with our young people, and what they do that's different, I suppose, from a member of staff at Swanley is they're able to be that advocate for the young person. During coronavirus in particular has taught us the value of the Think Forward programme. Whilst we've been in a virtual school environment, our coaches have been still working around the clock, building those links and keeping up the communication with young people who, despite our best efforts, we might not always be able to manage as individual teachers, just because of the range of other commitments that we have.
Hello, I'm Stephen Pevsner. I'm a partner at Proscow Rose, and we've been involved in Think Forward's business mentoring programme for the last couple of years. Think Forward's impact on our organisation and our staff has been nothing but positive. Think Forward's business mentoring programme is so well organised that it makes it easy for our organisation and staff to engage fully with the young people's development, to feel enriched by the experience. The enthusiasm, engagement and visible development of the young people on Think Forward's business mentoring programme means that our staff get quickly engaged and attached to their mentees.
Mine's one of the most challenged constituencies in the country when it comes to educational attainment, so we need to do different things to make sure our young people can reach their potential. Think Forward is a critical part of that. It's about helping those young people who might be at risk of going down a different path, to keep them going well in their education, to make them understand that key message that everybody can be good at something, and if they apply themselves they can have a good life.
When I think of Think Forward, the words that come to mind are impact, positive relationships with students and families. I think of one-to-one mentoring. I think of incredible support for school, and I think of it being really, really student focused. Think Forward offers students who are transitioning onto the next part of their educational journey. It not only offers them different avenues and opportunities, it offers them incredible support, absolutely outstanding care, and attention to their needs, their wants, their hopes and dreams for their futures and for their careers. And it's really bespoke for that, for our kids. And I think you can't beat that. You cannot beat the fact that in a world where, you know, sometimes they're driven down, you know, an academic route, our students, that's not going to be all of them. And so Think Forward offers them an opportunity to look at a bigger picture, and I just absolutely love that. It's a genuinely impactful programme, and it can absolutely 100% change lives.